When I moved into apartment 2B, I wasn't looking for anything except a quiet place to sleep and start over. I had just gotten out of a long, drawn-out breakup, the kind where nothing dramatic happens, just slow, suffocating silence until one of you finally says it. We're done, right? And then you divide up the silverware and never speak again. So yeah, I wanted quiet. Maybe too much of it. The place was small, plain, a third-floor walk-up with the kind of chipped paint and humming radiator that made it clear it hadn't seen a renovation in a while. But it was cheap, and the landlord was willing to overlook my so-so credit. That was enough. I noticed the thin walls the first night. It was around 10:30 p.m., and I had just finished arranging the last of my furniture. I flopped onto my mattress, no frame yet, just the box spring on the floor, and cracked open a beer. That's when I heard him. A voice, low, male, kind of smooth, in the apartment next door. I couldn't make out words at first, just tone. He was on the phone maybe, laughing occasionally. There was music, faint. Some indie playlist with soft guitar riffs and synths. It wasn't loud, not annoying, just close. The wall between us felt paper thin. I could hear when he walked across the creaky floors, when he ran his kitchen faucet, even when he sneezed. I figured it'd drive me crazy eventually. But it didn't. The second night, I heard him again. This time, he was talking to someone. Not on the phone, I don't think. It sounded like he was pacing. I heard snippets of what he said. No, I told you. I'm done doing that shit for free. Pause. Because it's not worth it, that's why. Another pause. You always say that, every time. There was something in his voice that stuck with me. Frustration, but not angry, tired, worn down. I listened until it went quiet. Then, a few nights later, the weirdest thing happened. I was brushing my teeth when I heard a knock. But not on the door. On the wall. 3 quick taps. Right behind where my head was. I froze. Another 3 taps. Same rhythm. I opened my mouth, then closed it again, feeling stupid. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe he dropped something. Then, a voice. Hey. It was muffled, but clear enough. Right through the wall, I wiped my mouth and leaned closer. Yeah? There was a pause. Then he said, Sorry, hope I'm not creeping you out. I laughed a little, nervous. Maybe just slightly. Another pause. Fair. I've been hearing you move around, and I figured I'd say hi, in my own socially awkward way. I sat down on the edge of the tub, toothbrush still in hand. Hi then. He knocked once more. Hi. We didn't exchange names that night. We just talked. For maybe 20 minutes, both of us sitting on opposite sides of a wall, talking through it like some ridiculous movie setup. He asked what I did. I told him I was between jobs, freelancing here and there. He said he worked from home, didn't say doing what. His voice was smooth but a little scratchy, like he smoked or maybe just didn't sleep much. Isn't it weird, I said at one point, that we're doing this instead of just meeting in the hallway? He chuckled. Extremely weird. So why are we doing it? Because I think I prefer you as a voice in the wall, he said. It's easier that way. I didn't know what to make of that, but I didn't ask. After that night, it became a thing. Almost every evening, usually around 10 or 11, he'd tap. I'd answer. We'd talk. Sometimes for 5 minutes, sometimes for an hour. We talked about the city, the neighbors, our worst jobs, our best memories, books we never finished, music we liked too much to admit. He made me laugh in this slow, careful way. Not with jokes, exactly, but with the way he saw things, the way he described people. He had a way of turning a sentence just right so it hit you sideways. And slowly, I started to wait for that knock. I'd sit in my room at night pretending to scroll on my phone, eyes flicking toward the wall, ears straining for that familiar rhythm. Then one night, I asked him something. Do you ever wonder what would happen if we actually met? There was a long pause. Yeah, he said, sometimes. So why don't we? Another pause. I don't know. I leaned back against the wall, pressing my shoulder into the plaster. Are you hiding something? He laughed softly. Aren't we all? For a while, the mystery was part of the appeal. I didn't know his name, he didn't know mine. We didn't talk during the day or leave notes or bump into each other on purpose in the hallway. It was just the wall, this fragile, thin barrier where we both seemed to let our guards down in a way I never did face to face with anyone anymore. Some nights, we'd both be tired. I'd be lying on my bed, staring up at the ceiling, and I'd hear the knock, soft and familiar, and just smile. You up? Yeah. What are you thinking about? And then we'd just talk. Like that. No filters, no expectations. He told me once about a fight with his brother that he still regretted. I told him about how I missed my dad's laugh, the one he had before he got sick. We both grew quiet after that. He didn't push, just said, "That sucks, man." And somehow, that helped. It was strange how easy it became. I started leaving a chair by the wall, not right up against it, but close enough. Sometimes I'd eat dinner there. Sometimes I'd read out loud if I knew he was on the other side. One night, when I was flipping through playlists, I asked if he wanted to listen too. Yeah, he said. Hit me. I picked something mellow, Bon Iver or something like that, and about halfway through the first song, I heard a quiet knock. Then his voice. You've got good taste. You've got good hearing. He chuckled. Thin walls, remember? But even though we talked every night, I still didn't know anything concrete. I didn't know his name, or what he looked like, or what he did for work. I only knew how he sounded when he was tired, or smiling, or trying not to cry. And that was enough, until it wasn't. One night, I got bold. It was past midnight, and we'd been talking about travel, places we wanted to go. He'd mentioned Lisbon. I said Tokyo. He started describing how the sidewalks in Lisbon felt like walking on warm marble, and I asked what time of year he'd been there. Long pause. I haven't, he said. I just read about it. Imagined it. I leaned my head against the wall. So, you're a liar, an imaginative realist. That's just a liar with good marketing. He laughed, and I laughed with him, and then it went quiet. But not uncomfortable quiet. Just the kind that fills space when nothing else needs to be said. And that's when I said it. Come over. It just slipped out. I didn't plan it, didn't think it through. It was barely a whisper. I almost thought he hadn't heard it until I heard him shift on the other side. What? Come over, I repeated, a little louder this time. I don't know. I want to see you. Another long pause, so long that I stood up and walked to the door, half expecting to hear a knock. But nothing. Then he said, I don't think that's a good idea. It hit harder than I thought it would. I backed away from the door, heart stupidly heavy. Okay, I said quickly. No worries. It's not that I don't want to, he added. It's just complicated. Right, I said, trying to keep it light. You're secretly a vampire. You can't come in unless I invite you through the wall. That made him laugh, but it didn't cover up the awkwardness. We didn't talk the rest of that night. The next day, I tried to brush it off. Told myself it was nothing, that I was getting too attached to a voice, to a fantasy. I went to work, stayed late, grabbed a drink with coworkers I didn't really like just to avoid going home too early. But when I got back to my apartment, the silence was brutal. No music from his side, no pacing, no knock. I waited until after midnight, hoping maybe he was just out, or asleep, or tap, tap. My heart actually skipped. I moved to the wall like a magnet. I'm sorry, he said. You don't have to be. I do, he said, and his voice sounded rough, like he'd been quiet too long. I've been weird about this, about you. I didn't mean to lead you on. You didn't, I said. I mean, maybe you did a little, but I'm the one who caught feelings for a guy I've never seen. Caught feelings? He asked, and there was something different in his voice. Surprise! Maybe even something close to relief. I mean, yeah, I said. Kinda hard not to. You're weirdly easy to talk to. You too. There was a long beat of silence. I'm not good at this, he said finally. At people. At showing up. You're doing okay, I said. Another pause. Can I ask you something? He said. Yeah. If we didn't share a wall, if we had just met at a bar or something, would you still want to know me? I didn't hesitate. Yeah, I'd want to know you. Then I heard it, soft, barely audible. A sigh. A long exhale, like he'd been holding his breath all week. I think I'd want to know you too, he said. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning felt like walking through fog. I went through the motions, brushed my teeth, made coffee, stared at the empty kitchen wall while it brewed, but everything felt closer. Like that wall between us had somehow shrunk overnight. Or maybe I just stopped pretending it was enough to keep things simple. There was no knock that morning. Of course not. Mornings were never our thing. We didn't do sunlight, reality, or eye contact. We did midnight confessions and half-whispered memories and shared playlists through plasterboard. But something had shifted. It wasn't just in my head anymore. He knew I liked him. I knew he wanted to know me. And still, we were divided by 6 inches of drywall and 100 miles of hesitation. That night, I couldn't wait. I pulled the chair back to the wall, grabbed a beer, and waited. No music from his side, no walking. Just the hum of the fridge behind me and the stupid click of my phone screen lighting up every few minutes with nothing. Then finally, tap, tap, my whole body relaxed. I was ridiculous. Hey, I said softly. Hey, he replied. Same spot, same voice. It felt like leaning against someone's shoulder, like that wall had become a person. There was a pause. I was thinking about last night, he said. About what you said. I waited. I don't know what this is, he continued, but I like it. You. The talking. It's been a long time since I let someone see me, even just a little. Same, I said. I think I forgot how to let someone in until you started knocking. I didn't plan on this, he said. I just thought you seemed quiet. And maybe I was curious. I laughed softly. That's one way to start a friendship. It doesn't feel like a friendship, he said. That stopped me. It doesn't. I agreed. More silence. I think we both needed it. To let the words breathe. To let the truth hang in the air without shattering it too fast. Then he asked, "Can I show you something?" I turned toward the wall. Through the wall? No, he said. I mean, can I come over? Right now. I blinked, completely thrown. Yeah, I said after a beat. Yeah. Door's unlocked. I stood up so fast I nearly knocked over the chair. A few seconds passed. Then I heard the sound of movement. Soft footsteps on hardwood. The creak of the floorboards right outside my door. A shadow through the frosted glass of the hallway light. My pulse pounded in my ears. The doorknob turned slowly. When the door opened, I froze. He was nothing like I imagined, and exactly everything I'd hoped. Dark hair that looked like he ran his hands through it too often. A hoodie hanging loose over jeans, his sneakers scuffed. Tired eyes, kind mouth. Hands buried in his pockets like he didn't know what to do with them. We stared at each other for a moment, both of us unsure whether to laugh or say hi or just go back to the wall and pretend none of this happened. Then he smiled. Hey, he said. This time, in person. Hey, I said back. He stepped inside, hesitant, like I might change my mind. Eli, I said, offering my hand. His eyes flicked to mine, surprised. Ben, he replied, shaking it. His hand was warm. The silence stretched again, this time with the weight of something new. No wall, no filter. Just us. I gestured to the chair. This is where I sat when we talked. He smiled. I figured. You always sounded like you were leaning forward. You always sounded like you were lying down. I usually was, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. Sometimes I'd fall asleep while you were talking, not because you were boring, just because it was comfortable. That made me laugh, and him too, and suddenly the air between us felt easier. We stood there in the center of my little apartment for a moment longer, unsure of what came next. Part of me wanted to backpedal, to say this was enough, that the wall made things safer. But the bigger part of me wanted to reach out and touch his arm just to make sure he was real. He must have read my hesitation, because he stepped a little closer. I don't know what this is, he said again, but I'm tired of walls. That broke something in me. Some last piece of doubt I'd been clinging to. Me too, I said. And then, almost without thinking, I leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't dramatic. No fireworks or swelling background music. Just soft and unsure. Like two people figuring out the shape of something new. But when he kissed me back, slow, warm, real, I felt everything inside me exhale. When we pulled away, he rested his forehead against mine. I really wasn't planning on meeting anyone, he whispered. Same, I murmured. We stayed like that for a while, in the quiet, in the in-between. Eventually, I pointed to the wall behind us. Want to help me knock it down? He grinned. Let's start with moving the chair. Ben didn't leave that night. We didn't plan it. He didn't bring anything with him. No toothbrush, no change of clothes. But once he stepped through the door, he just stayed. Like he was afraid to leave in case the spell broke. Or I was. We sat on the floor of my apartment, backs against the couch, sharing a bag of stale popcorn I'd forgotten was in the cupboard. Neither of us said much after the kiss. It wasn't awkward, though. If anything, it felt like we were still talking, just with our shoulders pressed together instead of words. He told me little things. That he'd lived in his apartment for almost a year. That he'd moved to the city after a breakup he never really recovered from. That the wall between our units had always felt like a nuisance, until he heard me humming one night and couldn't stop listening. You hum when you cook, he said, voice quiet. Not full-on singing, just little bits, under your breath. I didn't realize anyone could hear that, I said, smiling. I don't think you meant for anyone to, he said, glancing at me. But I was in a rough place back then. Just hearing someone on the other side of that wall, not arguing, not crying, just being alive, it helped. That hit harder than I expected. I'd spent so much of the last year feeling isolated. Even before moving into this place, it was like I'd been existing more than living. To think that I'd been someone's background comfort without even realizing it, that he had been mine in return, felt like something I didn't know how to carry. Ben leaned his head back and sighed. It sounds dumb, right? Not at all, I said. I get it, and I did. Completely. We talked until almost 3 a.m., voices soft and slow, like we were still talking through the wall and didn't want to wake someone. Eventually, he pulled his hoodie tighter and rested his head on my shoulder. You okay with me crashing here? He asked. Yeah, I said. I was hoping you would. He fell asleep like that, just slumped over, breathing deep and even. And I sat there with him, not moving, not speaking, just listening. He didn't snore, not really, just exhaled with this little breathy sound, like his body was finally unclenching. The next morning, I woke up before him. My back hurt from the floor, and I had a weird crick in my neck, but I didn't care. I watched him for a second, not in a creepy way, just curious. He looked younger when he slept. Softer. I made coffee. He stirred awake at the smell and sat up slowly, blinking at me. Morning, he said, voice gravelly. Hey, I said. I don't have much for breakfast, unless you want to split a granola bar and regret our life choices. He smiled, stood, stretched, and scratched the back of his neck. Regret sounds kind of sexy right now, he said. We shared the granola bar and took turns brushing our teeth with my spare toothbrush. Gross, I know, and talked about everything except what we were doing. It was like we both knew pushing too hard would spook it. He left around 10 to grab some stuff from his place. "I'll be back," he said, and I nodded, pretending I wasn't wondering if that meant just later today, or in the bigger picture too. But he came back, that afternoon, knocking this time. The real door, not the wall, with a bag of clothes and a half smirk. "You forgot to mention your water pressure sucks," he said. "Yeah," I said, "but my popcorn is mediocre at best." He moved in without officially moving in. Some nights he'd stay over. Sometimes we'd go a day or two back in our separate apartments, texting stupid memes or knocking through the wall again like we were flirting with our old selves. He never made a big announcement about leaving his place. But 1 week turned into 2, and soon most of his stuff ended up in my closet, without either of us saying the word move. It was easier than I expected, the kind of easy that made me nervous. Because I'd never done this before. Never had someone transition from mystery to comfort so fast. Never had someone who knew what I sounded like laughing and crying before they even knew what my face looked like. It felt backwards, but maybe that's why it worked. Then one night, a few weeks after the first kiss, he got quiet again. He was lying on the couch, legs across mine, flipping through some old photos on his phone. "Hey," he said. "Yeah? If I told you I used to mess things up on purpose, would you believe me?" I paused. "Like, self-sabotage?" "Yeah," he said, staring at the screen. "Like, things would start to feel good and I'd freak out, push people away. Or I'd disappear, or I'd convince myself they didn't really care." I rubbed the back of his leg gently. "Are you trying to tell me something?" He looked up, eyes serious. "I'm trying not to mess this up." "You're doing a pretty bad job of disappearing," I said. "You literally brought half your wardrobe over here." He laughed, but there was a tremble in it. "But if you do, I'll probably knock on your wall anyway." That made him smile for real. He reached out, pulled me in closer, and rested his head against mine. "I like being here," he whispered. I nodded, pressing a kiss to his temple. "I like you being here." For a long moment, the apartment was quiet. No traffic outside, no music, no wall, just him, just us. The night he said, "I like being here," was the first time I realized I didn't feel alone anymore. It didn't hit me all at once. It was quieter than that, like walking into your apartment and realizing you don't reach for the light switch because someone else already turned it on. Or waking up to the smell of coffee you didn't make. The little stuff, the kind of stuff that builds a home, even if no one ever calls it that out loud. Ben didn't use the word boyfriend, neither did I. We didn't sit down and define things. But we slipped into each other's lives like puzzle pieces that had spent years on opposite ends of the box. It felt unspoken but solid. And honestly, that scared me more than I liked to admit. I'd catch myself watching him when he was reading, or brushing his teeth, or folding laundry that was more mine than his at this point. There was something about the quietness in him, the way he didn't need to fill every moment, that made the space between us feel more intimate than any conversation. And yet, there was always that little voice in the back of my head. What if he leaves? What if this is just one of those phases? The wall made it special, but real life won't hold it up. I didn't bring it up, though. I didn't want to give the doubt any more room than it already took. It was a Sunday when things shifted again. We were walking back from the grocery store. Nothing dramatic, just 2 canvas bags, one hand in mine, the other swinging loosely. The city was alive around us, dogs barking, a street musician playing something jazzy, the kind of warm spring air that made you forget how cold the winter had been. Ben was quiet. Not in a bad way, just in that way he got sometimes, like he was building up to something but waiting for the right moment. When we got inside, he dropped his bag on the counter and turned to me. "I have to tell you something," he said. My stomach tightened. "Okay, I said carefully. "What's up?" He didn't answer right away. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, eyes scanning the floor like he was afraid of what he might find on my face. "I've been offered a job," he said finally. "In Chicago." I nodded slowly, waiting for the rest. "It's a 6-month contract. A good one. More money, better exposure. Something I'd been chasing for a while, and I didn't think I'd get it. But I did." I tried to keep my face neutral, but my pulse was loud in my ears. "When did you find out?" "A week ago." That stung. "I didn't know how to tell you," he added quickly. "I didn't even know if I wanted to go. Still don't." I sat down at the kitchen table and stared at the floor. Part of me wanted to tell him to go, not out of spite, but because he deserved good things. The other part, the louder part, just felt cold. "When would you leave?" I asked. "End of next month." I nodded again. There was a long silence. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he said. "You and me. It was supposed to be temporary." A voice through the wall. I laughed, bitter and soft. "Yeah, well, you're not the only one who didn't plan it." He came around the table and crouched in front of me. "I don't want to lose this." "Then don't go." It came out before I could stop it. Honest, raw, a little pathetic. Ben blinked. "You mean that?" he asked. I didn't answer. I just looked at him. And then he did something that surprised me. He smiled. Small, but real. "I wanted to hear you say that," he said. "Why?" "Because I wasn't sure how you felt. I didn't want to stay just because I was scared to leave. I wanted to know if I was staying for you." I sat with that for a second, my heart somewhere in my throat. "You'd give up the job?" "I'd figure something else out," he said. "Or maybe I'd try to make it work long distance. I just needed to know if you'd be in either option with me." I reached for his hand and squeezed it. "I don't want to lose you either." He nodded, a slow exhale leaving his chest. "Then we figure it out together." We didn't solve anything that day. We didn't make a decision or plan or draw up a 6-month timeline. But we started something. That night, he curled into me like he always did, and I fell asleep to the sound of his breathing. Steady, warm, familiar. And sometime in the early hours, I woke up to a noise. Not from him. From the other side of the wall. A new neighbor, maybe. Dragging furniture, muttering under his breath. I almost called out. Almost said, "Hey, you've got a good one next door if you knock," but I didn't. Because that was ours. Ben stirred beside me and pulled me closer. "You okay?" he mumbled, half asleep. "Yeah," I whispered. "Just thinking." He hummed and pressed his forehead to my shoulder. "I love you," he murmured, barely audible. I froze for half a second. Then I relaxed into it. "I love you too." And in the quiet that followed, the wall finally felt like just a wall. Nothing more. After the night he said "I love you," things changed. But not in the way I'd feared. I thought maybe it would make everything heavier. Or more complicated. Like we'd suddenly start acting like we had something to prove. But it didn't feel like that. It felt easier. Like something had finally clicked into place that was already halfway there anyway. We didn't talk about Chicago for a while after that. Not because we were ignoring it, but because we both silently agreed not to rush. I could tell he was still thinking about it. The way his brow furrowed sometimes when he checked his phone, or the way he'd get quiet in the afternoons, zoning out mid-conversation. But he stayed. Every night. Every morning. I started getting used to waking up with his feet tangled in mine, to the sound of his laugh echoing off my kitchen tile. The little things became routines. Grocery runs together. Swapping playlists on Fridays. Sunday mornings spent doing absolutely nothing and loving every second of it. There was one night, though, where I saw the weight of it hit him hard. It was late. We'd just come back from grabbing burgers at this hole-in-the-wall spot a few blocks down. He was quiet the whole walk back, which wasn't totally unusual, but there was something in the way he kept glancing at me, like he was trying to memorize me, or maybe apologize in advance for something he hadn't said yet. When we got inside, he dropped onto the edge of the bed and sat there, elbows on knees, staring at the floor. I stood in the doorway and waited. Finally, he looked up. "I haven't accepted the job yet," he said. "I figured," I replied, stepping closer. "They called me again today," he said. "Asked if I was still interested." "And?" He rubbed his hands over his face, then looked at me like he was searching for some answer I didn't have. I mean, not for the city. I don't care about that. But the job itself, it's what I went to school for. It's the kind of work I used to dream about when I thought everything was still possible." I nodded slowly. "And now?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Now I have you, and this, and I didn't expect to care this much." That hit me harder than it should have. Maybe because I'd felt the same thing. Like we'd both built something together that neither of us thought we'd ever want again. "I don't want to hold you back," I said, my voice quiet. "You're not," he said instantly. "You're the opposite of that." We sat in silence again, both staring at the floor like it had the answers. Then he stood and came over, wrapping his arms around my waist, pressing his forehead to my chest. "Tell me what to do," he whispered. I hesitated, not because I didn't know what I wanted, but because I was afraid of asking for it out loud. Afraid he'd only stay because I asked him to. But he looked up at me then, eyes tired but honest. "Then," I said carefully, "I want you to stay." He exhaled, long and shaky, and nodded. "Okay. You sure?" "No," he said, smiling faintly. "But I'm sure about you." After that, things didn't feel uncertain anymore. Still messy, still evolving, but anchored. Like we both knew that whatever came next, we'd figure it out together. He officially declined the job the next morning. I watched him do it, not because I didn't trust him, but because he asked me to be there, to see him say it, to witness the moment. "I'm choosing here," he told them. "Thanks, but no." It was the first time I saw him fully commit to something without flinching. We celebrated by doing absolutely nothing, stayed in, ordered too much food, and fell asleep on the couch halfway through a movie we never finished. It was one of the best nights I can remember. But, of course, nothing ever stays perfect forever. About 2 weeks later, Ben's old landlord called. The guy was clearing out the unit next door and needed him to pick up the last of his stuff. "Most of it was junk," Ben said. "A few old dishes, some half-used notebooks, clothes he forgot about." We went together. Walking into that empty apartment was surreal. It was almost identical to mine, just flipped. Same floor plan, same creaky radiator, same faded baseboards. But it felt cold, lifeless, like someone had peeled the warmth right off the walls. "I used to sit here," Ben said, pointing to the spot beside the bedroom wall. "Laid a pillow on the floor, just listened to you moving around." "That's not creepy at all," I said, nudging him. He grinned. "Says the guy who talked to a wall every night." I walked over to the wall and pressed my palm against it. "I remember the first time you knocked," I said. "I was convinced you were a serial killer. I mean, the jury's still out." We both laughed, but then it got quiet again. He came over, stood behind me, and wrapped his arms around my waist. "I used to wonder what you looked like," he said against my ear. "I'd imagine you sitting on the floor, eating noodles, talking to yourself." "I was," I said. "Every part of that is accurate." "I didn't know it'd turn into this," he whispered. I turned to face him, resting my forehead against his. "But I'm glad it did." He nodded, and we kissed. Soft, slow, like the apartment was watching us and smiling. After we left, the landlord asked if we knew anyone who wanted to move in. I told him I'd think about it. Ben squeezed my hand as we walked down the stairs. "We should save it," he said. "For what?" "I don't know. A friend, a stranger, someone who might need it like we did." That stuck with me. Sometimes, late at night, I still catch myself looking at the wall, Not with longing, not anymore, but with gratitude, because it brought him to me. We didn't tell people right away how we met. It wasn't because we were embarrassed. Far from it. It just didn't make sense in casual conversation. When people asked, "So how did you two meet?" there wasn't a smooth, easy answer. Saying he started talking to me through a wall always made someone raise an eyebrow like we were messing with them. So we started simplifying it. We were neighbors. But every time I said it, I'd glance at Ben, and he'd give me that look. The one that said, "Yeah, but you know the real story." The one that made me remember those late nights, those whispered talks, that first knock. How something simple became something that changed everything. A few months after he turned down the job, things finally settled. He got a new contract locally. Not quite the Chicago offer, but enough to keep him challenged. I picked up a steady gig editing for a small press, which wasn't exactly thrilling, but it let me work from home and spend more time with him. We were living together officially by then. He never even moved back into his old place, just packed it up and handed over the keys. Watching him close that door for the last time was strangely emotional, not because of the apartment itself, but because that place held the beginning of us. And endings, even the good ones, always hit a little harder than you expect. That night, after turning in the keys, he came home, our home, and collapsed on the couch with a beer. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I'd never knocked?" he asked. "All the time," I said, sitting beside him. And then I try not to. "Why?" "Because it freaks me out how easy it would have been to miss you." He looked at me for a long moment, and then his expression softened. "Yeah, me too." We didn't talk more after that, just curled up on the couch and watched some trash reality show that neither of us really cared about. That was the thing I learned about being in love. It's not about always needing to talk. It's about being okay with the silence. Sometimes I still catch myself reaching for the wall out of habit, like muscle memory, especially when I'm sitting at my desk or lying in bed, places where I used to wait for that knock. But it's not sad. It's almost like a reminder, a signal from some other version of me that things worked out, that I held on long enough to find someone who saw me even before they saw me. The wall is still there, technically. We never knocked it down, not out of laziness, more out of reverence. It feels weird to say that about drywall, but it was the first thing that ever held us together. Now it's a kind of monument, silent and still, but full of memories. One Saturday morning, Ben surprised me with paint swatches. "Let's give the wall some color," he said. "It's earned it." We ended up painting it a dark navy blue, almost black in some lighting. Rich and deep and calming. After it dried, he painted a small white dot in the corner. I looked at it, confused. "What's that?" He smiled. "Where I used to knock." My chest tightened a little in the best way. I didn't say anything, just reached for the brush and added a matching one on our side. "That's where I answered." We stood there for a long time, just looking at it. Two tiny dots on a dark wall. You'd never notice them unless you knew to look. We never had a big, dramatic moment where we declared our forever. No proposal, no ring. Just a quiet, steady building of something that felt like home. We made each other better without trying to fix anything, and maybe that's what made it feel real. Sometimes we joke about writing the story down, the wall that started it all, or something cheesier. "Imagine if this was some Netflix show," Ben said once. People would roll their eyes. "Too unbelievable?" "Too soft," he replied. "Not enough betrayal and chaos, just two guys falling for each other in real time." I kissed the side of his head. "Soft isn't a bad thing," he grinned. "I know. That's why I stayed." Months passed. Seasons shifted. The radiator finally gave out in winter, and we spent a week bundled in hoodies and blankets until the landlord could fix it. We fought over what groceries to buy, over thermostat settings, over who left socks on the floor, the stupid quiet fights that couples have when everything else is actually going really well. We laughed more than we argued, and when we did fight, we always found our way back to the couch, legs tangled, silence stretching into forgiveness. Neither of us were perfect. but neither of us had to be. It was late March when a new tenant moved into Ben's old apartment. We heard them moving in, scraping furniture, dropping boxes, cursing under their breath in a voice that didn't sound nearly as soft as Ben's once did. Ben and I exchanged a glance. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" I asked. He smirked. "We should say hi," I nodded. "Want to knock on the wall?" He grinned, stood, and walked over to the painted navy blue surface. He found the little white dot, the one we'd marked where he used to knock, and gently tapped 3 times. Tapped, tap, tap. We waited. No response. Then, a distant voice. "What the hell was that?" Ben stepped back and laughed. Definitely not how it started. "Maybe they're not ready for weird wall guys," I said, leaning into him. Maybe we were. I thought about that for a second, about how much had changed since the first knock, about how sometimes the strangest beginnings lead you to exactly where you're meant to be. We didn't knock again, but we did leave a note. Ben slipped it under their door later that night. I didn't read what he wrote. Just watched him return with that crooked little smile of his. "What'd you say?" "Just welcome. And that, if they ever need a friend, the wall's not as thick as it seems." That felt like closure. Not an end, just a gentle closing of the loop. Life moved forward. I got promoted. Ben took on more freelance projects. We talked about moving into a bigger place, but neither of us pushed too hard. There was something about the way this place held our story, something neither of us wanted to let go of just yet. Every so often, I still sit by the wall. Sometimes I'll put my hand against it and remember the nights I leaned there, heart full of questions and hope, waiting for a voice I didn't know yet to answer back. And sometimes Ben will join me, sit down beside me, fingers brushing mine, quiet for a minute before whispering, "Still there?" I always smile. Always.